We are approaching the very end here. We're going to be covering a lot of ground today, actually. We're going to be covering the last part of the 9th chapter, all of chapter 10, and then the beginning of chapter 11. So buckle in. We're going to be going pretty quick here. I'm going to do the best that I can to kind of slow it down. I did a funeral on Monday this week, and somebody that was there that came said, it's so nice to hear you actually tone it down just a little bit and talk a little bit slower. So I'm going to do my best to talk a little slower today. It's terrible when you got a lot to do, when you got a lot to say, and you got to get it done in such a short amount of time. But anyway, we're going to do the best that we can today. We are in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. You should have notes with you this morning. They are in your bulletin. If you don't have one yet, you can find one or borrow one from somebody else. We're in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. The title of what I'm going to talk about today, and all this really comes from Solomon, who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, is how to be dumb on purpose. In Ecclesiastes, it's basically called wisdom literature. It's that portion of Scripture that goes all the way from the book of Job to the book of Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. You've got these 5 or 6 books, depending on whether you want to call Lamentations poetic wisdom literature or not. These are basically about wisdom. They're about what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a child of God, and how those people act. It's wisdom literature. And Ecclesiastes covers a lot of ground from the beginning to the end. But here towards the end, you'll remember that Solomon is at the very end of his life, maybe even on his deathbed, and he is sharing from the wisdom that he has learned, all the things that he has picked up over his lifetime, and he's writing these things down to pass on to the next generation. Most older people that I know, they have a lot of wisdom to share. I think that we can all agree on that. When you got a young guy like me, I don't know anything. I'm making it up as I go along. But a lot of older people, as Solomon was, they have a lot of wisdom to share. And that's what I want you to understand here. It's not like you've got a preacher. It's not like you got somebody that's standing up front and yelling at people. It's more, I look at it as an older grandpa that's sitting down with a cup of coffee across the table from his grandkid and basically sharing the wisdom that he's learned. He says, I've learned things the hard way. I've got a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I've made. And so he's sharing from this wisdom that he's learned. But Solomon today, in the passage we're going to talk about, is how to be dumb on purpose. Nobody likes being stupid. Nobody likes being dumb. Nobody wants to be a fool. But what is foolishness? That's what we're going to talk about. I've actually got a list for you. It's not really so much of an outline, but I've got 11 different descriptions of a fool, of somebody that is dumb on purpose. That's how I define fool. It's somebody that knows to do right, but chooses to do the opposite. It's not that they have a lack of education or a lack of awareness or they don't have the information that they need to live successfully. They know what to do. They simply choose to do the opposite. They are dumb on purpose. And the 11 things that we're going to talk about as we walk through this passage together, I want you to understand that I'm not picking on anybody. There might be something that strikes a nerve. You might think I'm picking on you. Most likely, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm not looking at anybody. I'm not saying that I'm picking on any one person in particular. But that said, there are some very specific things that you might see in your own life. And there are some people here this morning that might feel like they're getting their inner child spanked. And that's not necessarily a good feeling. I don't want you to think that I'm mad at you or I'm picking on you. I'm not even talking about you. I'm talking about the person right in front of you. They're the one that are really messed up. If you think I'm picking on you, I'm not. You know, you're wonderful. You're perfect. I don't even know why you're here this morning. You obviously don't need church. Okay, so this is where we are. We are in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. We're going to begin reading in verse number 13 of the 9th chapter. How to be dumb on purpose. Number 1, fools despise wisdom. If you want to be a fool, if you want to be stupid on purpose, despise wisdom. Verse number 13 says, This wisdom I have also seen under the sun, and it seemed great to me. There was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it, besieged it, and built great snares around it. Now there was found in a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city, yet no one remembered that same poor man. Solomon starts out this talk about wisdom with a brief parable, just a little story. We don't know whether it actually happened, whether it's literally true or not, or if it's just an illustration, just a story that he's telling to make his point. But it doesn't really matter because the story is basically the same. When you're actually going back and reading the Hebrew, it's very unclear exactly what the story is here. Scholars are kind of divided about whether or not it happened exactly as the New King James tells it, where you've got a poor wise man that basically gives a way of escape from impending danger, from an attack that is coming from an army and a king that is much greater than they. That's basically the way that the New King James reads it. But an alternative way of reading this, especially in the Hebrew, is that a poor but wise man gave advice, gave counsel, gave wisdom, gave a plan to escape this coming attack, but he was ignored because he was poor. Regardless, the point is the same, that fools despise wisdom. Wisdom is not a good way, or is not the best way for you to earn notoriety or respect. The world is full of fools. The world is full of people that have no respect for the wisdom that comes from God. And if you're trying to be popular, if you're trying to be the number one guy in anything, you're going to come up short if you're going off of wisdom alone. Wisdom is not going to get the deal done. Fools are not impressed by the wisdom, especially if you don't have anything else to back it up. The reason why this man was ignored or he was forgotten is because he was poor. And in our world today, if you have money, if you're wealthy, people actually pay attention to you. Is that true? You look at somebody like, I shouldn't do it, I probably would get myself in trouble, but you look at somebody like Donald Trump, for instance. Okay, I've talked about him in just about every sermon. I don't even know why I'm so infatuated with him. But basically, I'll explain. One of the reasons why I mention him and I don't mention any other politicians is because I don't even consider him a politician. I consider him an entertainer. That's basically done. I'm not talking about his policies. I'm talking about his personality. Anyway, but you look at him. Has he said anything that your drunk uncle doesn't say every Thanksgiving? No. The only reason he's getting any kind of respect, the only reason he's at the top of the polls, the only reason everybody pays attention to what he says is why? Because he's wealthy, because he's got a lot of money, because he's a billionaire. If it wasn't for that, he'd be your drunk uncle that can't get 2 people to vote for him every election. He doesn't have anything interesting to say. He's just popular, and people pay attention because he's got a lot of money. It says in verse number 16, "Then I said, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard." Fools are also very loud. You know, and that's another thing you can say about Donald Trump. Why do people pay attention to him? Because he's loud. Not because he has anything intelligent to say, but because he says it very loudly. And this is the way a lot of people are. They feel like, volume is a good substitute for intelligence. And if you don't have anything to say, you might as well say it very loudly, and then people will pay attention to you. That's not what wisdom is. Wisdom is words spoken quietly. If you can't get your point across by speaking quietly, by speaking calmly, with substance to what you're saying, then you should probably not be saying a whole lot at all. Wisdom speaks quietly. The words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Dead flies putrefy the perfumer's ointment and cause it to give off a foul odor. This is where that whatever you want to call it, the phrase that we have today, a fly in the ointment, that's actually where this comes from. And basically what he's saying is that, look, a wise person can do one stupid thing, and all of a sudden it's all ruined. Everything is destroyed. Why? Because one stupid thing collects another and another and another. How many of you have ever put up one of those fly strips in your house? How do they work? You get one fly, and one of the dumbest of all of them, that lands on that thing, and then what happens? All the rest of the flies in your house, they fly past, and they see one of their buddies apparently has found something to, eat, to snack on, to poop on, whatever, and they think, okay, I'm going to hang out with him. And so they go onto that fly strip, and then after a couple of days, you've got 20 or 30 or 40 of them on that fly strip. And that's exactly what's happening here. The illustration that Solomon is using with folly, with you got a wise person that's got perfumer's ointment, something that smells really good, but it's destroyed because when one stupid, foolish thing that you do lands in that ointment, other stupid things will come upon it. They will collect, and eventually all those dead flies will begin to give off a foul odor. They'll begin to really stink. He says, and so does a little folly to one respected for wisdom and honor. You may be respected. You may be at the top of the polls. You may be very popular. You may have a lot of people that respect you. But you do one stupid thing, and that stupid thing collects more stupid things and more stupid things. Eventually, all of that respect and honor that you had is going to be gone because fools despise wisdom. So many people are looking out for the fall of another. When somebody has been lifted up, when they're put on a pedestal and we pretend that they are more than a mere mortal, we are looking out for the fact or for the day when they're going to fall. And this is what we're talking about here. This is the idea that Solomon is expressing, that fools despise wisdom. They don't respect the wisdom. They don't adhere to the wisdom. They aren't impressed by the wisdom of other people. What they are impressed by is volume and riches. Number 2, fools look ridiculous. Look at verse number 2. A wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart at his left. Even when a fool walks along the way, he lacks wisdom, and he shows everyone that he's a fool. In other words, we should see these fools coming. Why? Because they look ridiculous. I can tell a lot about a person, or at least I think I can tell a lot about a person just by the way that they drive. How many of you can identify with that? When you're seeing somebody just running down the road, I've never met that person, I've never said a word to that person, but based on the way that they can drive, I can tell whether that person is a complete and total imbecile. Okay? If you're driving 45 in the passing lane, I hate you, I think you're a moron, and I want you to go off into another lane or possibly never see you again. That would make my life a whole lot happier. Now, I don't know anything about that person. But the way that I see them going, walking down the road or driving down the street, I can tell a whole lot about them. He says that a fool's heart inclines him to the left, and a righteous man or a wise man inclines him to the right. Well, what's he talking about there? It's actually talking about your left versus your right hand. How many lefties do we have here this morning? Anybody lefty? Okay, all right. Nothing against left-handed people. I'm not saying that at all. But in the Old Testament especially, right-handed people were very, very much the majority because of a lot of, I could get into it. But anyway, what he's talking about here is not that a right-handed person is better than a left-handed person, but he's talking about whether or not you can do things with the hand that is not your dominant hand. For me, I can't write, I can't draw, I can't even throw a football with my left hand. I just can't do it. It looks ridiculous. And what Solomon is saying here, what he's illustrating is that a fool looks ridiculous because they're trying to do things with their non-dominant hand. That's an illustration. He's not using that specifically. But when you're trying to do something and you do things the most difficult way possible, that is what makes you a fool. How many of you know somebody like that? That no matter what it is, it seems like what they do it the hardest way that they possibly can. And you just want to take that away from them and put them in their dominant hand and say, this is the way that it's done. If you know a fool, it's known by the way that they act. It's known by the way that they walk down the street. Some of these people, they need a helmet just to walk down the street, or else they're going to hurt themselves. They're a danger to their own safety. Number 3, fools are celebrated. Look at verse number 4. If the spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post, for conciliation pacifies great offense. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, as an error proceeding from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, while the rich sit in a lowly place. I have seen servants on horses, whilst princes walked on the ground like servants. Fools are celebrated. We talked earlier about in chapter 9 about the king of fools. Fools make for themselves their own king. They celebrate the foolishness of other people. They reward fools for their foolishness. And in our own world today, this is probably more prevalent than it ever was before, because what is everybody obsessed with? Equality. We want everybody to be equal. We want everybody to be the same. And while I do acknowledge that every human being is equal in the sense that we are all created by God, in the image of God, we are all equal in that sense, we're not equal in every sense. There's a lot of things that separate people. I can stand up here and I can say, I'm advantaged, and I admit that I am, because I'm I'm almost 25 years old next week, and I'm a white, straight American male, and the more things that we use to set ourselves apart from other people, the more unique, the more different we consider ourselves to be. And there are certain advantages that come with that, and there are certain disadvantages that come with everything. But the problem is, in our world today, everybody wants to separate people, and they want to give certain advantages to other people, and that's nothing new, because in the Old Testament, especially in the days of Solomon, they were opposed to income inequality just as much as they are today. I'm not trying to get political, I shouldn't do this, but in what Solomon is saying here is that, look, they despised wealth. They considered wealth to be so evil that they would elevate poor people because they would put them in high places, they would put them on steeds, on horses, and then they would take the rich and they would shame them and make them walk on the ground. The masses of people, they would force them into humility, into poverty. They would take away their wealth. And what Solomon is saying is that, look, fools celebrate foolishness. That's what they want. That's what they want to elevate. They don't care about achievement. They don't care about what you may have done to earn your success. All they care about is equality and turning other poor people that don't deserve anything. And that sounds like I'm hating on poor people. I'm not. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not being very clear here. But what he's saying is that success and achievement should mean something. Not just celebrating other people that are more like yourself. Because what happens is a fool looks at somebody else and they elevate them as the ruler of fools, and they put them up on a pedestal thinking that maybe if I elevate this person as high as they can go, maybe because I'm probably just as smart as they are, someday I can achieve the same success that they have. Are we tracking? Is that what we're going for? Solomon is saying, listen, fools celebrate fools. Just because you're in a position of prominence, just because you are in a position of power, just because you've got wealth, just because other people have put you on that pedestal doesn't mean that you earned it. Doesn't mean that you deserve it. Fools celebrate foolishness. Number 4, fools disregard risk. Look at chapter number 10, verses number 8 to 9. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through a wall will be bitten by a serpent. He who quarries stones may be hurt by them, and he who splits wood may be endangered by it. What Solomon is illustrating here is that there is risk in just about everything that you do. If you're splitting wood, there is a good possibility that you could hurt yourself. I split a lot of wood when I was a teenager. I didn't really hurt myself that terribly, because I was fairly intelligent. You might not believe that, but I still have both of my legs today. And if you're breaking through a wall, you could very well happen upon a serpent. A serpent could reach out of that bite. A snake could reach out from that wall, and it could bite you, and you could be poisoned, and you could die. There's a lot of risk inherent in anything. If you dig a pit and you fall into that pit and you break your head open, well, that's just a risk that is there. There is risk literally in everything that you do. But a fool disregards risk. They don't think about the risk. They don't think about the chances that they're taking. They don't consider the fact that, you know what, I could really seriously hurt myself if I don't prepare, if I don't recognize that this risk is there. You got to be careful about what you're going to do. Fools rush in. They don't prepare. And that's actually the next note. Number 5, fools don't prepare. Verse number 10 says, if the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success. A serpent may bite when it is not charmed, and the babbler is no different. Fools don't prepare. They don't get ready. They don't spend the time preparing. And so what winds up happening is that they work harder and not smarter. If you prepare ahead of time, you can make the task itself a whole lot easier. He uses the illustration of sharpening an axe. You've got a lot of these fools out in the world that are basically your butter knife loggers that are going out there and trying to chop down a tree with a dull axe. And the problem with that is that not only do you have to work a lot harder to get that tree down if you've got a dull axe, I mean, this is basic understanding. Not only do you have to work a whole lot harder, but it's actually more dangerous. And those of you that work with this kind of thing understand what I'm talking about, because when you use more force, there's a whole lot more danger inherent in what you're doing. A dull axe, a dull chainsaw, a dull knife, they are actually a lot more dangerous than a sharp one is, because you have to use that much more force, that much more strength. And so you can chop right through your finger with a dull knife, whereas with a sharp knife, you probably wouldn't do that at all. Why? Because it's going to slip. A dull knife, a dull saw, a dull whatever is going to slip, and there's a lot more danger inherent in what you're doing. Fools work harder rather than smarter, and they are a danger to themselves. Why? Because they don't prepare. They don't take the time to make their job easier. He says that a serpent that is not charmed may bite, and it's the same way with the babbler. Now, there are people that you're going to run into in life that just like to talk. And we all know these people, that they just like to run their mouth. They like the sound of their own voice, and they just talk. You can get them on the phone, and they will talk forever. And anyway, these are people that no matter what you do, they're going to talk. They're just going to run their mouth. And what he's saying is that these are babblers, but they need to be charmed. These are people that are going to talk. They're just going to say things. And if you don't talk to them beforehand, if you don't get their story straight, if you don't charm them in such a way that they know the truth, that they know exactly what's going on, that they might even be on your side a little bit, he says they're going to turn around and they're going to bite you in the butt, just like a snake would. If you don't charm that snake, if you don't charm that babbler, you're going to wind up getting hurt. But what does that do? It takes preparation. It takes time. It requires some patience. You've got to get there ahead of them. You've got to be there before they do any damage to themselves or to yourself. Fools don't prepare. Number 6, fools talk but don't listen. Verse number 12, the words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool shall swallow him up. The words of his mouth begin with foolishness, and the end of his talk is raving madness. The words of a wise man are gracious, but the lips of a fool shall swallow him up. How many of you have ever been in an argument with somebody, and you're just going back and forth and you're debating, and about halfway through you realize that you don't even agree with yourself? Have any of you ever done that? I know I have from time to time, where you're just trying to make a point and you're going on, and they actually have a better argument than you do, but you don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit that you're wrong, and so you just keep on going and you keep on pushing, and eventually you just give up because you realize, you know what, I'm wrong. And this is what Solomon says, is that the words of a fool actually swallow them up. They don't even make sense. He says that they start with foolishness and they end with raving madness. I've been in conversations with people where they started out with just a question, with just an idea, with just a suggestion, and then it turns into a debate, and then it turns into an argument, and then it turns into something where it's just absolutely insane. It's just crazy. Why? Because they're not listening. They're talking. They're arguing. They're not listening to what you're actually saying because they're in such a hurry. They're trying to figure out what they're going to say next, what they're going to say to combat whatever is going to come out of your mouth. They're not actually listening to what you say, and they wind up looking ridiculous, looking absolutely silly. And this is what Solomon is talking about here. Fools talk and don't listen. Number 7, fools never accomplish anything. Look at verse number 15. The labor of fools wearies him, for they do not know how to go to the city. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and your princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, when your king is a son of nobles, and your princes feast at the proper time for feasts, for strength, and not for drunkenness. Fools never accomplish anything. They are wearied by their labor that doesn't actually accomplish anything. They don't actually do anything. Why? Because they don't even know how to get to the city. You talk to one of them, where are you going? Oh, to the city. Do you know where the city is? No, I have no idea. When do you hope to get there? Who knows? I'll get there eventually. And these people, they get so weary, they get so exhausted, they're worn out, but they never actually accomplish anything. Why? Because they wear themselves out with foolishness. They're drinking in the morning, they are getting up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. These people, they never accomplish anything, and they get to the end of the day, they haven't done anything all day long, and yet they're exhausted, they're worn out, and they can't do anything at all. They got to sleep their 14 hours a day. Fools never actually accomplish anything. We got to be careful that we don't wear ourselves out. If you're going to wear yourself out, you might as well accomplish something doing it. Am I right? If you're going to be weary, if you're going to be tired, if you're going to sleep, you might as well have something at the end of the day that you can say, this is what I accomplished today. That should be all of our goal, to be able to wake up every morning and say, this is what I'm going to do, that I'm going to live intentionally, that I'm going to accomplish this goal today. Maybe you're going to accomplish it, maybe you won't. But if you don't start out with that goal, if you don't actually accomplish anything, you're going to wind up feasting and eating in the morning, and then what happens? By noon, you've had, a big breakfast. I don't know if you guys have ever done this. I know I have. If you have like brunch on Saturday morning, you go to breakfast at like 10 o'clock or something like that, and then, you're done around about noon. Do you feel like doing anything the rest of the day if you have a big breakfast? I don't. And what Solomon is saying is that, look, a fool will feast in the morning, especially if you've got a prince that feasts in the morning. They're never going to accomplish anything. You need to feast at the proper time. Basically, the application for every sermon that I've given in the book of Ecclesiastes so far has basically either been A, don't be an idiot, or number 2, eat, drink, and be merry. If you've been following along, if you've gathered anything from I think this is the 11th sermon that I've done from this book, that's basically it. Eat, drink, and be merry, or B, don't be an idiot. And there is a place and there is a time for feasting and for gathering with friends and family and getting together and enjoying each other's company and enjoying a good meal and enjoying good beverage. Like I said, last week I wasn't really getting too much into it, but there is a place, I believe, for alcohol. I believe that God gave us that as a gift. But the problem is when we take that out of its proper place and we start abusing it, that's when it becomes a problem. I also wanted to say last week, I never got into it, that if you drink good alcohol, you can't afford to be an alcoholic. Amen? Don't drink anything that comes out of a box. Don't drink anything that has that's named after an animal, that doesn't have a foot on the front of it or anything else like that. If you're going to drink, I don't, become a pastor, but if you're going to, drink something that's worth drinking, okay? Have something that's you're not just drinking it to get drunk, but you're drinking it because you actually enjoy it. All right, that's basically all I've got to say about that. Okay, and then number 8, fools don't take care of their stuff. Verse number 18, because of the laziness, the building decays, and through idleness of the hands, the house leaks. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes merry, but money answers everything. How many of you have 99 problems and money would solve about 98 of them? Yeah, he says money pretty much answers everything. Now, Solomon has also gone to great lengths in this book to explain that money is not everything, but money in the right hands, done well, spent well, used well, it does solve a lot of our problems. But what Solomon is saying is that a fool doesn't have any money because he spends all of his money on things that he should have done himself. If you would learn to take care of your stuff, you can save yourself a lot of money in the long run. How many of you know people like this, that they'll run through cars like every 4 or 5 years because they don't take care of the one that they have? You wind up spending a ton of money. In the same way, You've got like in a house, he uses that basic illustration there. He says, a fool, their house falls apart, their roof leaks. And you know that if you take care of a problem early on, if you actually become accustomed and acclimated to the aisles at Lowe's, if you've ever been there, generally you're going to save yourself a lot of money by doing what? Preventative maintenance. A fool doesn't even know what that is. A fool can't even spell preventative maintenance. And this is a big part of what it takes to be considered wise in the eyes of God, is taking care of the stuff that God has given you. If you start out early, if you take care of the things that God has given you, you're going to have more money to do other things later on down the road, like feasting, like wine. Those are the things that God has given us to enjoy. A feast is made for laughter and a wine makes merry, but unfortunately we can't do any of those things. We can't have a good time. We can't throw a party. We can't enjoy ourselves. Why? Because we're spending money on things that are the result of our own stupidity. All right, number 9. Fools think that they know better. Verse number 20. Do not curse the king, even in your thought. Do not curse the rich, even in your bedroom, for a bird of the air may carry your voice, and a bird of flight may tell the matter. I think Solomon's being a little tongue-in-cheek there. I'm not sure if he understands what he's saying. But he's saying, do not curse the king, even in your bedroom. Fools think that they know better than the king. They think that they know better. This is something that people, say today, where I could run the country, or I could run the state, or I could run the town better than all the idiots that are in there right now. I kind of doubt it, personally. I know you, and you can't even run your own house. How in the world do you think that you're going to run the government? He says, don't curse the king, even in your bedroom. And obviously, Solomon is the king, so maybe this is a little bit selfish of him to say this. But what he's saying is that, look, fools think that they know better, that they could do a better job, and they curse the king because they think he's screwing everything up. Unfortunately, the king and the rulers and everybody else that we talked about over the last couple of weeks, those that are in authority, we went over this at length last week, they know a lot of things that we don't know, that I don't know. They have a lot of responsibilities, and they have a lot of things that are going on that we can't even begin to understand. And Solomon is saying, look, be careful that you don't curse the king, even in your bedroom, even if you don't think anybody's listening, because somewhere, somehow, it's going to get out, and people are going to find out about it. All right, and then number 10, fools never have a plan B. Verse number 2 of chapter 11. No, it's verse number 1. Excuse me, I'm really out of myself this morning. Chapter 11, verse number 1. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you'll find it after many days. He's not talking about feeding the ducks, although that is good and godly. He says, give a serving to 7 and also to 8, for you do not know what the evil will be upon the earth. He says, cast your bread upon the waters. What I believe he's saying there is talking about diversifying, about sending your grain sending your investments out in many different directions. He says, give a portion to 7 or maybe even to 8. Fools don't have a plan B. They put all their eggs in one basket, and then when they drop the basket, it's all gone. He says, cast your bread upon the waters, spread it thinly, spread it widely, so that if something happens to one of them, if you cast your bread all in one ship and the ship goes down, you've got nothing, right? But if you give it to 7 or 8 ships and one of them goes down, well, then you're down 15-20% at the very most. He says, fools never have a plan B. And this is so important for us. We all believe that everything is going to happen right for us right here and right now if we do this one thing. But unfortunately, many of you have known this, that things don't always go according to plan. Stuff happens. Life is rough. And if you don't diversify, if you don't have a plan B, if you don't assess the risk, going back to what we talked about earlier, if you don't assess the risk and understand that anything can happen at any time, you're going to wind up getting hurt. You're going to wind up losing a lot of what you had. If you have a plan B, if you have an extra way to go, if you have something else, if you diversified, you're very well could wind up in a much better position in everything in life. And it's not just talking about money, it's talking about a lot of things. Have a plan B, have something else that you can do, have a plan C and a D, have a path out, have an escape. And then number 11, we're finishing up here, fools have an excuse for everything. Verse number 3. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who's with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. Now, he's illustrating here, he's saying that, look, fools have an excuse for everything. There may be something that has struck a nerve with you this morning, possibly, maybe not. But there might be something that you say, you know what, this is kind of indicative of me. Maybe I should spend a little bit more time at Lowe's. Maybe I should take a little bit better care of my stuff. Maybe I should have a plan B. Maybe I should have something else that I should be doing. Maybe I should stop celebrating fools. Maybe I should assess the risks that I'm taking. Maybe something has done this in your life. Maybe you have assessed something in the sermon, in this passage that we've looked at today, and you say, you know what, maybe I should do something. But the question is not whether you know what to do, it's about whether you're actually going to do it. Fools have no lack of education, they have no lack of awareness of what the truth is. The problem is that they don't do what they know to do. Solomon is saying, look, he who pays attention to the wind and to the clouds, he never sows and he never reaps. If you look out at the wind and you say, oh, it's windy today, I'm not going to sow. The next day you look out, it's going to be windy. The next day it's going to be windy. You're going to have an excuse, you're going to have a reason why you don't do anything. Fools always have a reason. They always have an excuse for why they're not doing what they know that they're supposed to do. And I got to be careful there because I've heard every excuse in the book for why people aren't following what God has told them to do. I don't want to pick on anybody, so I'm not going to get into too much depth here. But when God has told you to do something, when he has placed something on your heart, and you say, I will if this doesn't happen, if this doesn't take place, if the stars align, if the weather's good, if I don't have to work, if I don't do this, if the clouds aren't there, if the wind isn't blowing, then I'll obey God. Then I'll do what God has told me to do. Solomon says, listen, fools have an excuse for everything. And the problem is if you don't sow because of the wind, because of the rain, because of the clouds, you're never going to reap. You're never going to have the benefits. You're never going to take in what God has for you. Anything that God puts on your heart is something that must be done if you ever want to benefit from it. If you ever want to reap the benefits that God has for you, you're going to have to put some work into it. If you want God to bless you, you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to sow. You're going to have to reap. But if you're looking to the clouds, if you're looking to your life, if you're looking to all the rest of these things that might or might not happen, a farmer looks out and he sees one cloud in the sky and he says, well, it might rain today. I guess I'm staying inside. If he does that, he's never going to reap. He's never going to sow. He's never going to collect anything. And I see so many people that are living their life in such a way that they never have or experience the blessing that God has for them because they're so consumed with that one little rain cloud that might or might not dump some rain on them. So what if you get wet? Now I understand I've collected hay and all the rest of that kind of stuff, and you might not want to go out and cut your hay if you know what I'm talking about. But we need to be careful. We need to understand that there is an excuse for everything. If you want to do something, if you want to be in church, if you want to talk to your neighbor about the Lord, if you want to do something to serve the local church, or if you want to, whatever the case may be, any of these things that we've talked about today, if God has laid something on your heart, there's always going to be an excuse. Why? Because we have an enemy. Because we have an adversary that is always there to plant that seed of doubt in your mind, to say, well, I would, but there's this. I would, but I can't because of this or that. We need to understand that God has a will and a purpose and a reason for you to live and to be blessed. But unfortunately, it's on us. It's on us to look past those excuses, to look past those reasons, to look past all of the things that are standing in our way. Because God did not put those things in your path. When God blesses you and when God wants to do something with your life, he is going to clear the path as best as he can, but it is up to you to make it happen. It's on you. And the truth of the matter is that so many of us, and I include myself in this, rob ourselves of God's blessing because we make excuses and because we say, well, I'm not feeling too good, or I didn't get enough sleep last night, or because I don't have enough money, or because of this, or because of that, and I could make a million excuses. But if we want to be blessed by God, if we want to overcome the 10 other things that we saw this morning, if you want to make a difference in your life, you're going to have to work for it. If you want to be considered wise by the eyes of God rather than a fool, you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to strive. You're going to have to plant before you can reap. God promises that the wise people of this earth are the ones that are going to be blessed because they've worked for it, because they've sown before they could ever reap. But you can make excuses, and you can make reasons, and you can tell people why you're not going to do this, but God's not going to be fooled. God's not going to be convinced. You've only got to do this for yourself. You can make excuses, and you can pretend that there's a reason why you didn't do something, and so much of the time, I really believe when people say, I would, but I'm not going to, it's because they don't really want to. When there's a reason out there, when there's something, you say, well, I would be in church, but it's my cat's got a birthday party and my dog's getting married and all the rest of these silly things. Honestly, sometimes I doubt, and I believe God kind of does too. I mean, he knows your heart way better than I do, but so much of the time I really believe that God is not convinced. If you wanted to be here, or if you wanted to be there, or if you wanted to do this, or you wanted to do that, if you really wanted to do them, you do it, regardless of what the risks are, regardless of what the problems are, regardless of what's standing in your way, because we serve a big and a powerful God, amen? We serve somebody that can clear that path. If you say, I am going to do this, no matter what, come hell or high water, I am going to make this difference in my life. I'm going to serve God faithfully. I'm going to plant so that one day I can reap. God's going to make it so that you can. I can promise you that. I've seen it in my own life over and over again. Have there been things that I didn't want to do? Sure, absolutely. But when you do them anyway, I found that the reward is that much greater. God always blesses his people for their effort, for their work, and for their labor. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not trying to make you miserable. I'm not trying to make your inner child spank. But what I am trying to do is help you to see that there is always an excuse. There's always a reason why we're not going to serve God. But if you ask God to remove those barriers, to remove those obstacles from your life, and you say, no matter what happens, I'm going to march forward. I'm going to do what God has told me to do, regardless of what the world throws my way, regardless of what the enemy lays in my path. I am going to follow Jesus. I can guarantee you that he's going to make it that much easier for you, and you're going to be blessed because of it. That's all I got to say about that. Heavenly Father, I thank you for your love.